Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen on the West Coast. Good afternoon in the Central Time Zone and Eastern Time Zone. And good evening over in Europe and beyond. And I guess really, really good early morning over in Asia, over in APAC. So if you're listening from there, thank you so much for getting up in what is, I'd call it the middle of the night. So thank you very much for joining us. Folks, it's our weekly webinar here at SMB Nation. My name is Harry Brelsford, and today we have a really robust crowd about the Ultimate Disaster Recovery Checklist. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the presentation. As always, I do want to highlight a couple of shout-outs. One is, it was just a little over a month ago, we announced on one of our webinars, the SMB Nation Peer Groups run by Josh Peterson. And if you want to get familiar with that, again, go to our website and click on peer groups. Those are filling up fast. The other would be today is the last call for the early bird pricing for the SMB Nation Fall Conference. We're a month out. It's the 11th annual Fall Conference. Here's the good news. More technical than ever. On the academic track, we actually don't have a sales and marketing speech. We've asked our sponsor partners to weave that conversation into their presentations. On the academic tracks, the conversations are technical. And so, for example, we have a migration pathway concerning the April 8th deadline for servers 03 and XP. And the outcome, here's where I'm going with this. The pathways have an outcome, and the outcome is you earn a Master Certified Migration Expert certificate and diploma at the end of the weekend if you pass the 2 exams after lectures. So follow.smbnation.com. I think that's kind of what we have on the housekeeping front. Be sure to use the chat feature to ask your questions. And I'm really looking forward to today's presentation because it's my main man, Dave Menz, is back with us. Dave, you and I just have good webinars. It feels like a Monday Night Football broadcast, that natural cadence between the color analyst and the sportscaster. How you doing, Dave?
Very good, thanks. That's a great way. You be my color analyst as we go through the webinar. This will be fantastic.
That's right. Well, let's get these good people into the good stuff.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to talk today about basically you as a reseller, VAR, whatever title you might use, partner. Before you get into building any backups with your customers, want to go through really what your customer is expecting ultimately. And in a lot of cases, they don't really know what they expect, but that's what the purpose of this is to understand some of the issues you're going to deal with when disaster does strike. So I'm going to walk through this presentation. At the end, we actually are offering to everyone a brandable checklist. It's a Word document we can send to you. You can rebrand it to your logo, your identification, and then send it out to your clients. But it helps them and you, when you're working with them, understand what's going to be involved if and when a disaster strikes. So make certain you've registered and identified yourself so that you can get this document from us. All right, basically a rework of what is on SMB Nation. We're talking today about the complexity of disaster planning. And with going through this checklist, we're going to show you how to reduce the impact of the different disaster scenarios and ensure your business has done all that is needed to do to get themselves back up and running. And back up and running is, of course, everybody's objective. And the shorter time they're down and getting back into business, you're going to look like a hero to them. And ultimately, when it comes time to renew that contract with your organization, if you've come out a hero, they're going to renew. If you've come out as a problem for them, they're going to perhaps look elsewhere. So that's the purpose of this, is to help you make certain you look like a hero in the future dealings with your clients, especially if a disaster strikes. Our agenda, where are we going to start, what's critical for a department's operation, and we're going to talk at a department level, like the accounts payable department, the receivables, the logistics group. They all have different IT needs and non-IT needs, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a backup set. Just again, when you do get into backup software, whether it's our software or many of the other ones, how do you define the data, the apps, and the bare metal restore or recovery files that you have to deal with? And then, of course, I'll go through our template. All right, where are we going to start? So before any backup is built, we need to understand the scenarios in which they're going to be used in. And when you think of, you're installing software for your client, you've done your own software, there's typically the operating system first, then you've purchased the application from Microsoft or whoever, and that application ultimately will create data files, both dynamic data files and static data files. And we all know with doing backups, of course, everybody wants to back up the data files. That's most important. That's the business. It's the nature of the business that data is always growing or shrinking, but it's dynamic in nature. The application files are naturally the applications. They are receiving updates perhaps from the vendor, such as Microsoft. I just had to happen today get my updates from Microsoft in their weekly updates. And the same thing with the operating system. They're also being updated on a timely manner. And as applications get added to the operating system, the registry files are being updated. So those are all important things to consider when building backup sets. And some applications for backup can do all of this in one backup set. Other backup set applications themselves actually let you distinguish between the data files, the application files, and the operating system. So something to think about when you do look at perhaps you are changing vendors for your backup solutions, your backup application, how they handle these three different areas of backing up. But how an application is used within each department, such as the accounts payable, receivables, logistics, influences other processes that the manager of that particular department handles. And the question I'm asking now, do you know these influences? Because these influences are going to impact you at time of disaster, if and when it happens. So here are the possible scenarios we have out there that happen in a business. Typically, we've got file corruption, loss of the data files. Sometimes the application gets corrupted. Then we get into the hardware or the virtual environment. There is the loss of the machine itself through power, through infrastructure. In the case of virtual, we lose the instance. If it's a physical machine, it's the physical loss. And then we get into the network issues, the LAN, the WAN. Many of us know what it's like with the internet going down, and we're not able to access information or applications that we're using that are dependent on the internet. And then finally, the worst case, we deal with office loss, the physical loss of where people go to work or where the IT technology is kept, and that can deal with fire damage, water, vandalism, and then we get, of course, into the natural disasters of tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and whatever else there might be out there, flooding. So all factors that we have to look at and plan for and recognize with the client you're working with that you need to work from these levels, from the simple corruption of a file all the way through to office loss. Harry, have you experienced anything in this area?
Well, I have some additions. Now one is serious, and then the other's a little less serious, but both are serious. But folks, accept my insights in the spirit I deliver them, as always. The first one is serious. And, you know, Dave, in our community, sadly, we've had a few good people pass away in the last couple of years, and we typically try to announce that in our newsletters and our magazine and so on. And as I've kept in touch with the surviving spouse, what they will find is that there's sort of where is the data, how do I get to the data, what's the password, and so on. I mean, it's not completely related to what you're saying, but you know, you got to, what is it, death, taxes, and the old say, the three things you can't avoid. I mean, so folks, there is a little bit of that issue, a survivability issue. The other comment on a little lighter note, but not too much lighter, is Dave, for whatever reason, in the last 6 months in my circle of friends, I guess we're all getting to the age where sadly some marriages just aren't working out, you know. And I've gotten in the middle of 1 or 2 divorces and stepped right back out. My family always told me, do not get in the middle of your neighbor's divorce. And the point is, Dave, there's some real hostility, and I do want to add that point on both a truth to humor comment, but that's kind of vandalism almost. You know what I mean? That these domestic situations are inflamed, and many of the individuals on the phone are family-run businesses, but more importantly, they serve family-run businesses. Does that make sense? I mean, there's some real there's some real issues here about vandalism. I think that's probably the appropriate title. I don't know.
Very definite. Both scenarios you spoke about are very key problems, and actually my next couple of slides will address that. And as I go through my slides, keep that perspective that Harry just spoke about in mind too, because, you know, even your business partners, if your business partners, you know, sort of don't start working together, that is a form of vandalism as well. So, yeah.
Well, I call it a form of divorce with joint custody.
Right.
But go on.
So, other things to think about in a disaster are, again, you mentioned staff in a roundabout way with the loss of staff. We have to deal with all the printed information, the supplies that, you know, are in that supply cabinet, copiers, calculators, the phones, the scanners. Those are other pieces of technology that are needed to be replaced after the worst style of or worst type of disaster. The shared resources that other departments work with, you know, you all, especially small business, will have a lot of that. And you just addressed it there in a way, Harry, about logins, passwords, activation codes, encryption values. Where have they been written down? Where are they accessible? All these issues that have to be looked after if there's a loss of an individual or a technology that looks after these things. How do you get to those secure websites? You know, all of us tend to host our websites on some service out there, and we know the passwords. Do other people know the passwords in case you're not around? These are things that all have to be considered. Again, who you're working with vendors and services on the outside that perhaps you individually are working, or your client's owner is working with, you have to understand their participation in the running of the business. And then ultimately there's the internal groups themselves. The other key thing is the single points of failure within a business. And typically many employees within a business have unique skills and abilities that you've brought them on, or the business you're servicing. Their employees have been brought on because of what they can provide to the business. And typically, they're the one and only who know that. And I use a term quite a bit. It's called hit by a bus. What happens if that employee is hit by a bus? Who can take over? How quickly can you ramp up other people to take over that individual? And, you know, those individuals have a lot of knowledge, and we have to know, how do I deal with it when they're not around? And the same thing with technology. I was talking about scanners, phones. What happens if those pieces of technology have no redundancies in the business? How do you get them back up? You know, how do you get your wireless router back up and running if nobody knows how it was installed 5 years ago? These are all issues that people have to address and plan for. So another key thing, of course, is most business is still pretty paper-based today. We're transitioning slowly. Technology and applications are replacing paper, but you know, there's a lot of paper out there. The IRS has always required the last 7 years of, you know, paper receipts, paper activity to be stored. Well, does anybody know where it's been archived offset, whether it's in the original paper format or even now as a digital copy? How and when will they get to it if they have to, and actually where is it physically, if you had to deal with that disaster? And another key one, the last line here on the slide, where are those program disks, installation files, activation codes? Are they being stored off-site? Are they being stored with you as the service provider for that particular client of yours? It's a question you should be asking your clients, including maybe you've become the new provider in the last 2-3 years, but they've got applications and operating systems that they've had 5-6 years ago. Where are those program disks, application files? All very important in case of disaster. So here's another issue. Disaster has struck. How do you stay in business, or how does your client stay in business without computers? Because a restore, and again, depends on the level of service you're offering your client in the case of business continuity, but most of us are seeing we're backing up files, the recovery of those files back down onto the client's site can take hours to days of bringing that volume of data back down. And that is a factor. So how does that business continue while we're waiting for the IT, the technology to be recovered? And of course, another thought is, what's priority 1 versus priority 2? Is payroll more important than accounts receivable? Which applications? All these factors have to be looked at when you're helping your client plan for disaster recovery. New computers being brought in. We're actually seeing some changes in that in the environment, where we're seeing the virtual replacement of computers on a single physical platform. That's helping us. But in a lot of cases, it's just the workstations that the employees work from. Where is that technology going to come from if it's the original has been destroyed? Again, I'm thinking of tornado in the Midwest, where you know, you can wipe out a lot of technology because of a tornado. Where are you going to get that new technology, and how soon will it show up, and ultimately where are you going to place it? And when it comes to facilities, I like to recommend, it's interesting enough, hotels and their meeting rooms are today probably great places to put up a temporary office if you've lost your physical location. They are all have, of course, Wi-Fi connections and a lot of the infrastructure you would need from a communications perspective, and as well the facilities of desktops, chairs, and you know, washrooms, everything else needed to run a business. And you as the IT group just need to bring in those new computers and the other technologies they need to get themselves going. But it sounds easy. It looks easy by stating this on this slide here, but have any of these procedures ever been documented and tested? And that's really what it comes down to, is back to where I spoke earlier. We do backup of data. Have we ever tested it? And ultimately, when it does have to be used, do you as an organization look good with the process of recovery? And as I said, if you don't look good, when it comes time to renewal of contracts with your organization, they might have a second thought about doing it with you or looking elsewhere. So that's important as you plan and work with your clients, that you are considering your reputation with that client and how you've addressed disaster. So this is just a quick highlight of all the processes that you'd find in a business. You run your own business, you recognize many of these functions, but your clients, of course, have these. Somebody has to prioritize, even if it comes to business continuity, disaster preparedness, which is going to be priority one. What can wait? Data on a restore process is still a very linear process, meaning, the byte after byte after byte. Which of those bytes representing which application and which data structure associated with the application come first, and who get queued up in behind it to come second, third, fourth, fifth. That's part of planning as well. So a few more of the examples of critical processes and functions.
Hey, Dave, I
Yes.
have a question. Hold on. Oh, darn it, I got too much open on my desktop. I'll get there. I broke off the question screen. There we go. Put it over on screen too, so I can both watch the presentation and see the question flow. We have, I'll read it and then we'll see if it's properly constructed. Sean McCormick wrote it. Sean, I'm sure this makes sense, so let's just take it from the top. LastPass, master password to your lawyer. Then when you pass, your family or significant partner will have the keys to the digital world. Oh, I get it. Okay, he made up a word, LastPass. So, Dave, you ever heard of that? I guess for a lawyer kind of has the master password list. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. That is a good place, to have somebody have that access, or they're retaining it for you. No different. Again, it sounds like we're talking about a family instance, a data deposit box, a good friend, an application. I mean, it's interesting. I practice that. I have a little booklet beside me, my little black book, and if something were to happen to me, my wife opens it up and she gets to see my wife or whoever uses it actually in the future, and see all my passwords, all my general logins that I use. And but yes, to have a second backup and have that off-site of your physical residence or physical business, it's very important, and it's good planning.
Yep, and I would concur. I would also have the embassy staff start to burn all the diplomacy cable documents. Start burning. Okay, go on, Dave. You know me. I'm gonna be inappropriate wherever possible. So go ahead.
All right. But those are good points. Again, as you think about your own personal instance, but again, you can relate it back to any business. And where is this information? Where can we go and get ourselves back into business as fast as possible? So now I'm going to go through sort of the highlights of a checklist. And this is, again, I'm taking highlights from the actual document, but each application a business has that's IT-based or even paper-based, but in most cases today everything tends to have an IT component to it. You need to understand what is the process or function it's serving, what is the name of the application, where is that application? Today we're seeing a lot more cloud computing, and that brings a very interesting factor in that stuff up in the cloud. Somebody knows where it is, people use it, but if you've lost an individual who knows that particular component quite intimately, and you don't have access to that individual, you could be in trouble. So you need to, again, identify where is it. What servers, if it's in-house, are being used to run this application or these processes. And then you want to look at, and again, this is part of backup, how often are you backing up the data files? Are you doing it every 24 hours? Are you doing continuous data protection so that if there is a disaster, the amount of keying that has to be re-entered after your recovery is perhaps minutes or less than an hour compared to 24 hours of rekeying? How often is the application being backed up? If that application is one that is managed over the internet by the vendor, who provides weekly updates, are you backing up the application in sequence with the vendor's updates? Same thing with the operating system. And I spoke earlier, my good friends at Microsoft give me a weekly update to my operating system. So in turn, I back that up so that if I could recover, we use the term a bare metal recovery to recreate the operating system on new servers or laptops, desktops, whatever it might be. Are you up to date with the latest changes so that your application, so everything's in sync? So those are things that have to be known. And then I'm stressing this, and this is a tough area, although new services are coming to the market now that makes it easier, is the scheduled testing of these recoveries. Have they been done? When were they done? And ultimately, was there success in that recovery testing? And if not, why not? And this is a new area called, and actually many of you on here might want to consider this. We are introducing these services as disaster recovery as a service. We see that as a new opportunity for MSPs, VARs, to add to their portfolio of services to their clients. And this is, again, through this checklist, as simple as this, is a great way to introduce it to your clients about, let's do some testing to make certain that if disaster strikes, we know we're going to get you back into business. And it's a revenue opportunity, and with the right way of presenting it in your service plans to your clients, you can definitely profit from it. So one of the next things, of course, is with this continued checklist is how many people are using that application concurrently, meaning at one time how many people are keyboarding something into it. And then, of course, there might be more users because of the type of business has shifts, they work 7 days a week, whatever. And how many people are cross-trained on this application, how many IT people are associated with this application. All these things and that need to be known when disaster strikes, and they call you in and ask you to help us get back up. And if you don't know these things, of course, oh, one person uses it, I'll get one desktop ready for them to use it, not knowing that they come back to you and say, yeah, there's 25 people out here needing this at the same time. Can you set it up such an infrastructure?
Hey, Dave, I would also add a lot of this sort of assessment process. You and I were talking offline before we went on the air about the server migration opportunity. April 8th is the end of extended service for anything 03. So that's a pretty big family of servers, ranging from S to medium to enterprise. I mean, that's the full stack. And this kind of legwork you're suggesting here can be woven in to part of that. It's MIS 101, right? Assessment and then come up with a plan and so on. So I just want folks to kind of keep all this on their radar screen as they're thinking of backup and disaster recovery. And if you're migrating people to new worlds, it opens up a whole new conversation about what your BDR and paradigm will be. With that said, folks, we're at midpoint. It's the bottom of the hour, so be sure to use the chat feature to answer your questions. For those that joined us late, it's the weekly webinar, and we are talking about the ultimate disaster backup checklist. So please continue. This is good stuff. Thanks, Dave.
Very true, Harry. As you say, as they look at their migration or forklift from 03 to, I guess, 12 is the new latest version. Yeah, there's a lot of planning to go with it, and this checklist could be utilized quite readily for that part of it as well. So thank you for identifying that. Down here at the bottom, single points of failure identification, again, the personnel and the technology. We're talking earlier that there's many personnel in an organization that are very intimate with an application, and if they're not available, I use the term hit by a bus, but it could be as simple as they're on vacation that week, and not accessible. Those are components that have to be looked after. And if you know if there is a single point of failure, you can identify it and then come up with an alternate, more cross-training, whatever. That's going to be useful for, as Harry spoke of, migration to a new operating system, or just again the loss of that technology. Now, next page is very interesting, and I use this scenario. The building gets destroyed overnight, fire, water, natural disasters, vandalism, whatever. And I'm going to deal with this issue. The backup vendor or yourself as the VAR, MSP who work for this client, get the temporary servers and start the recovery underway. Sounds easy. Actually, with good planning, this would be almost, very easy to do. If you've never experienced it, of course, your backup vendor, whether it's ourselves at Storage Guardian or any of the other ones, are going to hopefully give you that assistance to get it going. But we still strongly recommend, practice makes perfect, as my father would say, and please attempt it with your clients. And as I say, with new technologies such as Hyper-V, VMware, we can do a lot more of that practice. But have you considered these other issues that happen when a scenario such as this occurs? And the case of loss of that building is, where are the users going to get the new replacement technology? Are they going to offer up their own home PCs, laptops, workstations, or are your client going to expect you to have that sitting on the shelf ready to pull down in case of disaster? Are you phoning up CDW, running down to Staples, whatever, to buy this hardware off the shelf? These are factors that come into how you're going to look for your client at time of disaster. How are you going to help them? Same thing with how are you going to access these temporary servers that have been brought up? They're up in the cloud, they're in your building, whatever. Where are the business going to relocate? And I use that example of a hotel and a meeting room who probably will have Wi-Fi. But these are all factors you have to consider. Network. Now that they're up and running, you've given them access through workstations of some form. They've got internet connection. How do you now protect the integrity of that data now transiting that? Have you got a VPN connection? Because encryption methodology to protect it. And then with you being their IT support personnel, who's controlling access and all these things to it? So it sounds easy to recover getting the computers up and running, but then you got to deal with how are the people going to access it, where are they going to work from, how are they going to deal with the integrity of the data being used. I mentioned earlier how you get the data back into sync. If you're doing every night a 24-hour backup, and of course disaster strikes just before the next 24-hour cycle, that's a lot of daily activity that has to be brought back into sync as well. So those are other factors that are going to be influencing recovery and getting people back to work with their clients. So that was the highlights of the checklist. As I say, there's a lot more on that checklist that we're going to offer to you. We're going to provide you with a Word document. As I say, you can change the branding from the Storage Guardian, which is up here in the upper right of this image. And it's a great tool for you to introduce to your clients how to think about business continuity planning. Harry mentioned, of course, the migration from 03 to 12. All excellent ways on how to use this. And as I say, many of you will receive this just for attending. Many of you will also want to be able to just contact myself or go to in the case of my organization, Storage Guardian, and get additional information. So Harry, that's the end of it.
Okay.
Let's go to the questions and give everybody enough time to throw them at me.
That's right. Well, I certainly have a few, and folks, encourage you to come up with questions that you may have. While you're formulating your questions, you can always sneak a peek, a little peekaboo over at smbnation.com. Look at the upper right, look at the Peel advertisement for Storage Guardian. And, you know, Dave and Storage Guardian, you guys have been great community citizens, so you're almost too modest on these academic webinars. We do ask that our community sponsors do the right thing and deliver academic content from which goodness will follow. I guess that's our basic philosophy. At one time, Google had a philosophy of do no harm as a mission statement. And the shoe fit for a while, but fortunately, that's we've kept our shoes on, and that you see where I'm going. You know, karma, guys, is karma dollars that you today have received an academic lecture on the checklist and the checklist in the disaster recovery area, but. Please be a good citizen. Peek at the peekaboo ad in the upper right over at smbnation.com for Storage Guardian and learn a little bit more about what they do. Dave, I was going to say, first and foremost, that hell, man, I want this checklist. I mean, the fact that I can brand it Harry Brelsford, sheesh, man, that's you know, I'm an author, and that's kind of like a copyright-free gift, right? I mean, you can't do that in the world of book publishing. You can't just take someone else's work and put your name on it as the author. So, so that's pretty cool. Now, did I hear you right? Let's verify my ears are working. Okay, that people can take this gift and then brand it with their MSP logo, go visit with customers, and appear to have their A game on. Is that correct, Dave?
Exactly. It's a Word document, and it's a very simple graphic image that we use in our case there in the upper right. And, yeah, they can replace it with whatever. They can change the footer. I mean, that's a great capability about a Word document. And for those very familiar with Word, you can go in and change the author and everything else. It's wide open.
Yep. Yeah, Dave, I'm getting a message from Heather over in the control room that we don't have questions queued up. Folks, I'm going to give you a first call for last call on the questions. And on the one hand, it doesn't completely surprise me because the presentation that you've offered today is entirely straightforward, and it's not the same as if we were delving deep into SQL server stored procedures. It's a little bit different beast today. And I get that. On the other hand, folks, this is your chance to also ask questions about Storage Guardian's product. And again, we haven't, by design, made that a huge emphasis of the webinar today. But if you have some high-level questions about the Storage Guardian product line, now is your chance. And again, I've issued first call for last call. Let's see if you want to dig deep into the reservoirs and shoot over a question. I'm watching the screen. I'm going to give us a second call. And folks, we'll give it one more minute before we'll let everybody return to the salt mine. While you're formulating your questions, let me start to wrap up with a couple housekeeping notes. So again, introduce yourself to our SMB Nation peer groups over at smbnation.com. Click over and discover what we've been doing the last 2 months with Josh Peterson running it. Today is the early bird deadline for the fall conference, so go to fall.smbnation.com to capitalize on the fall conference, and a shout out to our migration pathway where you can earn the Master Certified Migration Expert certification. We do have a question. This is coming from Chuck Clark. Chuck, thank you. What does the badass contain? Oh, I'm sorry, BDR RAS. Dave, hey, Dave, I've got, you've either hit a home run on branding or something got lost in translation coming across the border from Canada, buddy boy. But what does the RAS contain?
The bare metal restore, I guess, is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
the BDR.
AS. Okay.
Yeah, well,
sorry, Dave, having too much fun.
No problem. Yeah, the S is beside the D on the keyboard. So.
Okay.
But what a bare metal restore is basically, in the case of our software we use at Storage Guardian. It represents the operating system environment associated with the applications on the same machine, meaning the registry files, meaning the state of the operating system at that particular time. And we're able to take that backup set, and if you have to recover to a new hardware or a virtual instance, we can take that and recover it into that new environment and bring, in effect, everything forward to that new one. I must say now, with the advent of VMware and Hyper-V, we've also got different names for basically that same function when it becomes virtual-to-virtual recoveries in either Hyper-V or VMware. We don't call them BDRs anymore. We're using other terms, but basically it's disaster recovery.
Yeah, cool. And by the way, Heather has just slapped me. Got a slap down from Heather with my inappropriate sense of humor. And Heather, as always, I appreciate it. I can defend myself. I have the text is very small on the screen, and yesterday was my birthday of a certain age that I will not mention, and it's just getting harder to read small text. So I'm defending myself, Dave. Didn't know I'd have to offer a defense. That's okay. Okay, next question. Ed Hyde asks, how do we get the template, the Word document?
Well, we've got through SMB Nation your registration information, so
That's right.
once Heather or whomever provides it to us in the next 24 hours, we'll be turning around and sending it out, as well as I know we'll provide that template to Harry, and as Harry indicated earlier, he'll make it available to all of you as well from the SMB Nation site. So.
Absolutely. So, folks, last call for questions. And again, I can appreciate the nature of this conversation is a little bit different than, we had a recent one on group policy objects and Active Directory. That's a different beast. So counting down, and again, make yourself familiar with some of the things that we have up. We have is the slide deck available? So, Dave, is the slide deck available when you send out your information?
I can make it available, definitely, yes.
Okay, great.
And if they're interested in branding it, we can even speak about that, yes.
Well, you are easy to work with. That is very cool. Your contact information is up on the screen. I believe we've cleared the queue. So, again, folks, join us every week at this time, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Dave, thank you so much for delivering delivering more value than you've taken. That's a good philosophy in life.
It was a pleasure.
And, folks, do the right thing and get to know Storage Guardian. Have a great weekend coming up, Indian summer out here in Seattle. So wherever you may be, enjoy what is turning into fall quickly, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.